I never thought a forest silence could feel so heavy. I arrived at Pooja Creek during the off-season, just before the first heavy Colorado snowstorms. I was filming an amateur documentary on high mountain trail erosion. Boring work, but it paid. My guide, a park ranger named Evan Rusk, warned me the same way he warns all hikers. If you hear something big moving off the trail, don't go toward it, ever. Nothing happened the first night. The second night, everything changed. It began with a sound I couldn't identify. Deep, raspy breathing, as if something enormous were pulling air in right outside the camp. Not footsteps, more like dragging leaves, but with weight behind them. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it toward the trees. Nothing. Just the vapor of my breath. Near dawn, a sharp crack woke me, a branch snapping much closer this time. I sat upright in the tent. Outside, a dark mass moved between the pines, far too large to be an elk. Then came a blow, like a gigantic fist slamming into a trunk. The echo rolled through the entire gorge. Something was marking territory. I decided to leave early and head south along the trail. I wasn't staying another night. I packed my gear and started walking as soon as the sun came up. 5 minutes in, I felt that presence again. Not footsteps, more like a faint vibration in the ground, subtle, rhythmic. I stopped. The wind cut off instantly. The forest went mute. That's when I saw it. Between two pines about 30 meters away, a massive figure stood hunched at the shoulders. It wasn't a bear. The torso was too long, the arms nearly touched the ground. Its dark hair was uneven, smeared with mud and old snow. The worst part was the eyes. Not glowing like a startled animal's, but dull, fixed, absolutely aware that it was watching me. I didn't run. I couldn't. The creature took one step forward, slow, testing my reaction. Then another, firmer this time. When it opened its mouth, it made a sound I'd never heard before, a deep, broken growl like something that hadn't used its voice in months. It leaned forward, huge hands gripping the earth, and suddenly charged. The attack wasn't a leap or a wild roar. It was worse, a calculated rush. I threw myself downhill, tumbling over rocks and roots. I heard it tearing full branches off trees as it tried to reach me. Every strike sounded like a collapsing trunk. I scrambled up and ran, not daring to look behind. Several times I felt its breath, so close the air vibrated at my neck. Only when I reached a more open area did the noise stop. I didn't hear it retreat. It simply wasn't there anymore. Evan found me hours later, covered in mud with shredded clothing. I didn't tell him everything. There was no point. I only told him half, that something had followed me. He nodded, but with a look I'll never forget. That's why I told you not to listen. I accepted the night shift at the Timberline weather station because no one else wanted it. They said it was boring, isolated, and predictable. But in the internal notes, there was a line from the previous technician, Sarah Lewin, that unsettled me. Don't go outside if you hear banging. Stay inside and don't respond to any noise. I assumed she meant animals, maybe a black bear used to snooping around. Nothing more. But after 2 weeks here, I wished I'd taken that warning far more seriously. The station sits alone among old pines on slope of the Arapahoe National Forest. At night, the wind often sounds like something walking through the trees, which I learned to ignore. But one early morning, while reviewing humidity data, I heard a sharp, heavy thud on the north wall. Not a scratch from a small animal. A real impact, solid, forceful, like something big had leaned or slammed against the metal panel. I went to the reinforced window to check. Nothing but darkness. But something felt wrong. Absolute silence. No wind, no leaves moving, no insects. The kind of silence that tells you something is very close. A second hit came shortly after. Harder, the structure trembled. I turned on my headlamp and stepped outside through the side door, armed only with the standard inspect and report protocol. Every technician followed it until that night. I had barely taken 5 steps when I noticed the tracks in the fresh snow. They were huge, not bear tracks, longer with a defined heel and forefoot. They led toward the woods, but also circled the station. Whatever it was had been moving around the building. Instinct told me to get back inside, and I didn't question it. I locked the door, even though I knew a simple lock wouldn't stop something with the size implied by those prints. At 2:41 a.m., the final impact hit on the main door, a single strike that made the whole structure shudder as if a battering ram had hit it. I approached the narrow inspection window beside it, barely a slit meant for security checks. I saw it. Or rather, I saw enough to understand why Sarah quit. A massive figure stood in front of the entrance, leaning forward. The pine behind it barely reached its shoulders. It looked like it was evaluating the door, tilting its head, breathing heavily, irritated more than anything else. Its silhouette was immense, thick, covered in long, dark hair. Its arms hung at its sides, but tense, ready to strike again. It made no strange sounds. It didn't try to communicate. It was simply testing, again and again, the building's resistance, like a territorial animal that refused to tolerate my presence. It stayed there for several minutes. Then it walked away into the trees, not running, just moving with steady, weighty steps that made the snow crack like ice under a hammer. In the morning, I found giant hand marks on the metal door frame. Not scratches, pressure, as if it had tried to pull the door open. I quit that same day.
Elk Ridge was a small mine, shut down in the 80s due to collapses and poor management. I was only there to record images and data for a university project on abandoned mining sites. My field partner, Mitchell Danner, insisted it wasn't dangerous as long as we didn't go in too far. The first day went smoothly. The second, not so much. It all started with a strange smell. Not moisture or rust, something like a large animal, dense and musky, mixed with wet fur and earth. It drifted from the forest surrounding the main entrance. I told Mitchell, but he blamed it on an elk. But an elk doesn't leave hand-shaped prints on a metal wall. We found the marks the next morning. Long fingers pressed deeply into the dusty surface, as if something had leaned there for a while. They weren't human, but they weren't from a bear either. And it was clear the creature had come during the night. There were no fresh footprints on the entry path, only around the panel. Mitchell insisted we needed to document the prints before leaving. I wanted to pack up and go immediately. As I adjusted the camera, we heard the first sound, a deep crack, like a thick branch snapping, but very close, just a few meters into the trees. Not an animal fleeing. Something was moving toward us. Mitchell whispered, "Don't run yet," but his breathing shook. We both stepped back slowly toward the mine entrance, the only spot that provided at least a minimal sense of shelter. The crack came again, now followed by heavy, dragging, rhythmic footsteps, too heavy for any animal typical of the region. We saw it for the first time between 2 fir trees about 30 meters away. A massive figure covered in dark fur, uneven and caked with mud, as if it had been digging or crawling through wet soil. Its shoulders were so broad they looked like they warped the space between the trunks. It didn't advance right away. It just stood there, watching us, tilting its head with unsettling calm. Mitchell tried to talk to it, make noise, something. I grabbed his arm to stop him, but it was already too late. The sound of his voice seemed to irritate the creature. Its posture changed instantly. It lowered its body, bent its arms, and charged at us with a speed that didn't match its size. We sprinted into the mine instinctively. I tripped on old rails and Mitchell dragged me toward a side tunnel. The creature reached the entrance a second later. The impact against the structure thundered like an explosion. Chunks of concrete and dust fell around us. It didn't try to crawl in or do anything unnatural. It just struck again and again, testing the mine, measuring the resistance. Each hit felt deliberate, as if it intended to bring the whole entrance down. The ground vibrated under us. Every blow felt more focused, more forceful. The mine wouldn't hold. Mitchell began shouting to distract it. It worked, but in the worst way. The next hit wasn't aimed at the entrance, but higher, directly at the weakened structure. Rocks gave way. A partial collapse sealed the opening, and the sound of heavy footsteps began to fade. We were trapped for 2 hours before the rescue team located us through the radio. Outside, they found enormous tracks leading back into the forest. Mitchell never spoke of it. Neither did I.
I always thought working the night shift at Crystal Pines Shelter would be peaceful. Keep the generator running, check the radios, assist lost hikers, and nothing more. But that October night, with the forest covered in fog and the main road closed due to landslides, I experienced something I still struggle to accept as real. The shelter is a large wooden cabin surrounded by towering pines. It has only 2 windows facing the forest, and when night falls, they look like 2 open eyes staring into the darkness. At 10:14 p.m., I received a radio message. 2 hikers, a couple, Gavin and Mallory Kerr, were calling for help from the western sector. Their transmission was full of static, but one thing came through clearly. It's not an animal. We don't know what it is. I went out with my flashlight, following the marked trail. The air was so still that my own footsteps sounded out of place. I found the couple about 500 meters away, shaking, covered in dirt, their arms scratched. They told me something had been watching their campsite for hours. It wasn't a bear, they repeated. It was looking at us from way up. They pointed to the treetops, not the ground. I brought them back to the shelter, got them inside, and secured the doors and windows. The first thing I noticed was the smell, a dense, musky scent, like a sweaty deer mixed with damp earth. It wasn't coming from them, it was coming from outside. At 11:02 p.m., we heard the first sound, a deep crack, as if someone were snapping a thick branch with their hands. Then footsteps, heavy ones, very heavy. It wasn't running, it moved as if inspecting the perimeter, testing the ground around the shelter with a slow, deliberate rhythm. I shut off the lights. The 3 of us crouched behind the main table. The creature walked close to the window. We didn't see it clearly, only the shifting shadow and the subtle vibration it left in the floorboards. But one detail chilled me. Its head rose above the top of the window frame, and that window is over 2 meters above the ground. Panicking, Gavin tried to peek outside to see if it had moved away. I grabbed his arm to stop him. Right then, a sharp impact hit the south wall. Not a scratch, not a brush, a direct blow, like a massive log slammed into the wooden boards. The whole cabin groaned. The second hit was stronger,
The creature was testing the structure, just as a large animal would when trying to break into a shelter. Mallory began crying silently, and my heartbeat felt louder than the impacts themselves. Then we heard something worse than the blows. Breathing. Heavy, steady breathing on the other side of the wall. A low, damp sound. So close it felt like it was exhaling onto the wood. Gavin lost control and screamed. That was the trigger. The next impact was a full-body charge. Tools rattled on the walls. The joints of the cabin shook. For a moment, I thought it would break through completely, but the structure held. Slowly, the pressure eased, and the footsteps began to move away. It didn't run. It simply withdrew, as if deciding the effort wasn't worth it. We didn't sleep until sunrise. When I checked outside, I found pressure marks on the wood, high up, far too high for any known animal, and massive tracks in the damp soil leading back into the deep forest. I never worked another night shift at Crystal Pines. No one should be there when that decides to come close.